Hello everyone. So you might already know there are a lot of front-end technologies in the market like Angular, React, Vue.js, Svelte, Solid.js, many others. In this video, we'll explore Svelte. So let's see what is Svelte. So we'll explore Svelte. So this is their official site, which says web development for the rest of us. Okay, and they show something like, I guess these are parts which gets moving and then it gets manufactured and packed. Okay, Svelte is adjective, which means attractively thin, graceful, and stylish. Svelte is a UI framework that uses a compiler to let you write breathtakingly concise components that do minimal work in the browser using language you already know, HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. It's a love letter to web development, but don't take our words for it. Developer consistently rank Svelte as the framework they are most excited about using. So as per them, Svelte is being used by many companies like Yelp, Square, Apple, Spotify, New York Times, IKEA, and so this is the documentary story how it origin, and they are a friendly community, so backed by Vercel. That's interesting. Vercel already has Next.js and countless donors developed by full-time and part-time. So it looks like Vercel is already backing major front-end technologies in the market. React, as you might already know, is from Meta, and then Next.js was by some other guy, but I guess Vercel bought it, which we can validate in some other another video. Svelte is free and open source. So let's see. There is a Svelte, SvelteKit, CLI, MCP. There are some tutorials, packages, playground, and blog. Packages, if we see, they are shipping packages for Drizzle, Tailwind, and different component library. I guess they are trying to create an ecosystem of it. And if we see in blogs, Svelte recently, December 1, 2025, introduced integrated observability in SvelteKit. Okay, bringing Svelte summit in the whole community. Advent of Svelte, it was 2024. Svelte CLI. So they are basically working on their products, and these are the blog. And what was the last framework? Without the framework, why didn't we think of this sooner? So there is a blog by them where they are mentioning something which I guess you can read later. You can't write serious application in vanilla without hitting a complexity word, but a compiler can do it for you. With this new framework has a runtime. Thanks, I'll pass. Front-end developers in 2018. We are shipping too much code to our users like a lot of front-end developers. I've been in a denial about the fact, thinking that it was fine to serve 100 kbs of JavaScript on page load, just use one less.jpg, and that's what really mattered was performance once your app was already interactive. But I was wrong. 100 kb of JS isn't equivalent of 100 kb of JPG. It's not just the network time that'll kill your app startup performance, but the time spent parsing and evaluating your script, during which time the browser becomes completely unresponsive. On mobile, those milliseconds racks up very quickly. Yep. For basically low-end devices, which many of customers can have, it is difficult. If you're not convinced that this is a problem, follow Alex Russell on Blue Sky. Alex hasn't been making many friends on the framework community lately, but he's not wrong. But the proposed alternative to using framework like Angular, React, Ember, polymer hasn't yet gained traction in the front-end world, and it's certainly not for the lack of marketing. Perhaps we need to rethink the whole thing. So what problem do framework really solve? The common view is that the framework make it easier to manage the complexity of your code. The framework abstract away all the fuzzy implementation details with the technique like virtual DOM diffing, but that's not really true. At best, framework move the complexity around, away from code that you had to write and into the code you didn't. Instead, the reason that ideas like React are so widely and deservedly successful is that they make it easier to manage the complexity of your concepts. Frameworks are primarily a tool for structuring your thoughts and not your code. Given that, what if the framework didn't actually run in the browser? What if instead it converted your application into pure vanilla JavaScript? It's interesting. The frameworks like Angular and React, they ship their engine into a browser, and which basically tries to run your application, but they are mentioning that we could possibly do it without shipping our engine into the browser. Just like Webull convert ES 2016 to ES5, you would pay no upfront cost of shipping a hefty runtime, and your app would get seriously fast because there would be no layers of abstraction because your app between your app and browser. Introducing Svelte. Okay, Svelte is a new framework that does exactly that. You write your components using HTML, CSS, and JavaScript, plus a few extra bits you can learn in under 5 minutes. And during your build process, Svelte compiles them into a tiny standalone JavaScript module. By statically analyzing the component template, we can make sure that the browser does as little work as possible. Okay. The Svelte implementation of to-do MVC weighs 3.6 KB zipped. For comparison, React plus React DOM without any app code weighs about 45 KB zipped. That's too much. It takes about 10x as long as for the browser just to evaluate React as it does for Svelte to be up and running with the interactive to-do MVC. And once your app is up and running, I guess like they are basically saying like it's similar to writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript directly and just shipping it to the browser, so that browser does whatever it needs to do, which we used to do earlier before the framework. But they are mentioning that we could write in the framework which would parse like basically transpile it in the build time itself, and your engine won't be shipped. I feel, as till now what I've read and what I can assume, I feel it may be good for simpler application, but not sure about how would it handle complex application, because for handling the complexities in simple terms, frameworks are introduced. So we'll see once we go hands-on. Once your app is running and up and running, according to JS framework benchmark, Svelte is fast as heck. It's faster than React, it's faster than Vue, it's faster than Angular, Ember, Reactive, or Period, or Riot, or Methril. It's competitive with Inferno, which is probably the fastest UI framework in the world for now, because Dominic Gunaway is a wizard. Svelte is slower at removing element. We are working on it. Okay, it's interesting. In some another video we can watch, or we can go through this Inferno JS. So in this video we won't go into it, but even Svelte is mentioning that this is the fastest one. So there must be something to it, which we will explore in some another video. Which is probably the fastest. Okay, it's basically as fast as vanilla JS, which makes sense because it is vanilla JS, just vanilla JS that you didn't have to write. Okay, so they are already praising about Inferno. Okay, we'll look into that later, but that's not the important thing. Well, it is important. Performance matters a great deal. What's really exciting about this approach though is that we finally solve some of the thorniest problems in web development. Consider interoperability. Want to npm install a cool calendar widget and use it in your app? Previously, you could only do that if you were already using a correct version of the framework that the widget was designed for. If cool calendar widget was built in React and you are using Angular, then well, hard cheese. But if the widget author used Svelte, app that use it can be built using whatever technology you like. It's interesting. What I did not exactly understand this. If cool calendar widget was built in React and you are using in Angular, it would be hard cheese, right? But if the widget author used Svelte, so if cool calendar widget was written in Svelte, apps that use it can be built using whatever technology you like. Okay, so as per them, if the widget is being developed in Svelte, it can be easily used by any framework. Why? Because they are purely shipping HTML, CSS and JavaScript only, which is like a web component sort of. On the to-do list, a way to convert Svelte component into a web component. Exactly, that is what I understood. It's like a web component only, or code splitting. It's a great idea. Only load the code the user need for the initial view, then get the rest later. But there's a problem. Even if you only initially serve one React component instead of 100, you still have to serve React itself. With Svelte, code splitting can be much more effective because the framework is embedded in the component and the component is tiny. Okay, even they are mentioning the component framework is embedded in the component. Do they ship? Okay, we'll figure out. Finally, something I have resolved with a great deal as an open source maintainer. Your user always want their feature prioritized and underestimate the cost of those features to people who don't need them. A framework author must always balance the long-term health of a project with the desire to meet their users' needs. That's incredibly difficult because it's hard to anticipate, much less articulate the consequence of incremental bloat. It takes serious soft skills to tell people who may have been enthusiastically evangelizing your app tools app to that point that the feature isn't important. But with the approach like Svelte, many features can be added with absolutely no cost to people who don't use it, because the code that implement those features doesn't get generated by the compiler. If it's because the code that implement those features just doesn't get generated by compiler if it's unnecessary. Okay, Svelte is a very new. There's a lot of work still to creating build tools, integrations, setting a server-side render, hot reloading, transitions, more documentation, examples, starter kit, and but you already built rich component with it, which is why we have gone straight to a stable. This read the guide, try it in on this. So we'll go through the tutorial. We will explore their tutorial. They have tutorial here. Okay, just a second. We can create any application with npx sv. What is sv? Svelte create dot. Okay, Svelte is a tool for building web application like other user interface framework. It allows you to build your app declaratively out of component that combines markup, styles and behavior. That components are compiled into small efficient JavaScript module that eliminate overhead traditional associated. You can build your entire app with Svelte, for example using an application framework like SvelteKit, which this tutorial will cover. Or you can add it incrementally to existing code to it. You can also ship components as standalone package that work anywhere. How to use? You'll need have a basic familiarity of HTML, CSS, JavaScript to understand Svelte. The tutorial is split into 4 main parts: basic Svelte, advanced, basic SvelteKit, advanced SvelteKit. So I get this basic, advanced, basic, advanced. Okay. Each section will present an exercise designed to illustrate a feature, later exercise built on the knowledge gained in earlier ones. So it's recommended that you go from start to finish. If necessary, you can navigate via the menu. If you get stuck, you can click the solve button in the top right of the screen. Okay, there is a solve button here. The solve button is disabled on sections like this one that don't include an exercise. Try not to rely on it too much. You'll learn faster by figuring out where to put each suggested block and manually typing in the editor. Okay, so welcome to Svelte. Okay, sorry, it's Svelte, SVELTE. So let's go to next. In Svelte, an application is composed from one or more components, so it's a component driven development only. A component is a reusable self-contained block of code that encapsulates HTML, CSS and JavaScript that belong together. Okay, so they are creating a component which you might know if you have already practiced or used another frameworks. It's an encapsulation of HTML, CSS and JavaScript. So they are using Svelte file for it, and the app.svelte file open in a code editor to the right is a simple component. Okay, so this is a simple component. Component that just renders some static markup isn't very interesting. Let's add some data. So as for them, this is very simple one. Yes, it is. It's like a hello world. First, add a script tag to your component and declare a name variable. So add a script tag and declare a name variable. So we'll add a script added, and we'll declare a name variable which will have Svelte. Okay, and here the lang would be TypeScript, I guess. Then we can refer to name in the markup. Interesting. So here I can do name. Oh, and I can I guess we will keep Svelte only. This is interesting. SVELTE. Okay, inside the curly braces we can put any JavaScript. Try changing name to name dot name header. Okay, name dot to upper case. To uppercase for a shoutier greetings. I guess we'll move on. Just like you can use curly braces to control text, you can use them to control element attributes as well. So we'll see how we can use it to control element attribute. So we have image, and which would require, interesting, they are able to give this as well. So it needs to have src, and here we can give src like this. That's better. But if you hover over the image in the editor, Svelte is giving us a warning. If we hover over it, it is giving a warning. Should have a alt attribute. Basically, when we're building web apps, it's important to make sure that they are accessible to the broadest possible user base, including people with, for example, impaired vision and motion, or people without powerful hardware or good internet connection. Accessibility, shortened to A11Y, isn't always easy to get right, but Svelte will help you by warning if you write inaccessible markup. In this case, we are missing the alt attribute that describes the image for people using screen reader and people with slow or flaky internet connection that can't download the image. Let's add one. So we'll add alternate text to this. Man dances. Okay, we can use curly braces inside attribute. Try changing it to name dances. Try changing it to name dances, and let name is equals to man. Okay, shortened attribute. It's not uncommon to have a attribute where the name and values are the same. Yes, name and values can be same like this. So in that case we can simply, I thought we could do this, but that's interesting. We could do this. Okay, just like HTML, you can add a style tag to your component. Let's add some styles to the p element. So we'll write some styles for p element, and we need a color of golden rod. Font family we would need is Comic Sans MS Cursive, and we would need font size of 2 em. Interesting. We could write HTML directly, script in script tag, and styles in style tag. Importantly, these rules are scoped to the component. You won't accidentally change the style of p element elsewhere in your app, as we'll see in the next step. Okay, it would be impractical to put your entire app in a single component. Instead, we can import a component from other files and include them in our markup. Add the script tag to the top of this. So top of this we would add another script. Again, its language will be TypeScript, and import nested from nested.svelte. So we can do this, include a nested in the component there. So here we can do this, here we can do nested. Notice that even though nested.svelte has a p element, the styles from this don't leak in. So if we see this is another paragraph, but somehow we are not getting it. So import nested from nested.svelte. This is correct, and this is a paragraph, this is another. Okay, it's already there, but it's hidden somehow. Okay, component names are capitalized to distinguish, and I guess we can do this. Yep. Can we do this? No. Okay, and to distinguish this from the HTML element. This is interesting. They are saying component names are capitalized to distinguish this from HTML elements. So we need to use capital letter for component name. Okay. Ordinarily, strings are inserted as a plain text, meaning that characters like this and this have no special meaning. But sometimes you need to render the HTML directly into the component. For example, the words you are reading right now exist in the markdown file that gets included on this page as a blob of HTML. In Svelte, you can do this with a special @HTML. So let's see, let's take, if this is an HTML, we can do this strong, and here we can do HTML. Interesting. And important, Svelte doesn't perform any sanitization of this expression inside before it gets inserted into the. This isn't an issue if the content is something you trust, like an article you wrote yourself. However, if it's some untrusted user content, example comment on an article, then it's critical that you manually escape it, otherwise you risk exposing your users to cross-site scripting attacks. So they are specifically mentioning that they are not sanitizing, whereas other frameworks majorly sanitize those default. So that's good. And at the heart of Svelte is a powerful system of reactivity for keeping the DOM in sync with your application state. For example, in response to an event, make the count declaration reactive by wrapping the value with state. So this is this, and we do state. This is called reun, and it's how you tell Svelte that count isn't an ordinary variable. Reuns looks like functions, but they are not. When you use Svelte, they are part of the language itself, and all that left is to implement the increment. Here we do count plus equals to 1. As we saw in the previous exercise, state reacts to reassignment, but it also reacts to mutations. We call this deep reactivity. Okay, they act on reassignment and mutations both. Make numbers in reactive array. So this is the number, and it has 1 2 3 4. So let's wrap it into a state. And when we change the array, so let's say we change numbers dot length, and we say numbers dot length plus 1. Okay, and on click add number is called GTH. Okay, this is deep reactivity. It would be interesting to know how they are able to handle it, because that may have performance implications as well. Like in case of Angular, it provides change detections which is too inefficient, but now they are moving towards signals, because it's very, and even like no framework basically gives you this deep reactivity by default. Even in React, when you use memo or use callback, they check with reference only if reference changes or does not change. When we change the array, the component updates on beta, still we can push to the array instead, and they are saying we can push to the array as well. So you can do numbers dot push, and with this you can do this. Interesting. Deep reactivity is implemented using proxies and mutations to the proxy that do not affect the original object. It would be interesting to read this, but we'll go through this later. Deep reactivity, they are using proxies. JavaScript has a concept of proxy as well, where you can proxy through objects and variables, and mutations to the proxies they are doing, so that original object is not affected. They are basically changing the another object. This object is not affected. This is a wrapper, and they are changing this, I guess. Okay, often you will need to derive state from other state. For this we have the derived reun. So let's say we have a total here, which is derived numbers dot reduce, and we have t comma n, which would be t plus n and then 0. The expression inside the derived declaration will be re-evaluated whenever its dependency, in this case just numbers, are updated. Every time numbers are updated, it is re-evaluated. It is often useful to able to track the value of piece of state as it changes over time. Inside the add number function, we have added a console log statement. So we are adding console log into this. But if you click the button and open the console or using the button to the right of the URL bar, button to the right of the URL bar, time's up. Okay, we'll see reactivity. I will go through till reactivity today. So if and to go till reactivity, we have effects and universal reactivity. We'll see that. So they are mentioning that inside the add number function we have added a console log. Okay, if you click the button and open the console tower using the button to wither, you'll see a warning, a message saying the message could not be cloned. Okay, content state proxies, message could not be cloned, open dev tool to see it. Okay, that's because numbers is a reactive proxy. There are a couple of things we can do. Firstly, we can create a non-reactive snapshot of the state with the state dot snapshot. So you can do state dot snapshot first thing, which is a non-reactive snapshot of the state. Alternatively, we can use the inspect run to automatically log a snapshot of the state whenever it changes. This code will automatically be stripped out of the production build. Okay, so another thing they are saying, we can use inspect instead. Inspect run. So basically, okay, so here you do this only, and here you do dollar in inspect numbers. Inspect is a tool with which you can do this, and you remove this. Interesting. So you can do state dot snapshot or inspect. You can customize how the function display by using this. Inspect, with inspect you have with which text function, and here we are getting an array, so we can do array dot reduce t comma n t plus n comma 0. This is this much and this, so I guess we are fine till this. And with function, for example, you can use console dot trace. Okay, with console dot trace to see where the state changes originated from. Okay, interesting. So far we have talked about reactivity in terms of state, but that's only half of the equation. The state is only reactive, something is reacting to it, otherwise it is a sparkling variable. The thing that reacts is called as an effect. You have already encountered effect, the one that Svelte creates on your behalf to update the DOM in response to state changes. But you can also create your own with effect run. Most of the time you shouldn't. Effect is best thought of as an escape hash rather than something to use frequently. If you can put your side effects in an event handler, for example, that's almost always preferable. So they are saying if you can put your if side effects in event handlers, basically it's happening on some action. Let's say we want to use set interval to keep track of how long the component has been mounted. So let's say elapsed 0 and interval is 1000, and here we want to do effect which says set interval, and here we have interval which we can utilize, and here we are saying interval plus equals to 1. What is interval? This is interval, this is interval. Okay, or interval is a state, and here elapsed we are passing. Okay, set interval, set, okay, set interval effect. There is an effect, and there is this int is not defined. Okay, click on the speed up. The speed up buttons a few times, click the speed up buttons a few times, and notice the elastics faster, because we are calling set interval, each time interval gets smaller. What is happening? Speed up, with speed up we are dividing interval by half, and with speed down we are slowing it up. Okay, so we have elapsed, we have interval, effect is there which does side effect, and it is doing set interval every interval, and it is saying elapsed, and every time we are changing this is getting changed, and I guess say interval is getting recreated. We will possibly in later parts they may have deep dive as well. Then we click the slow down. Well, it doesn't work. That's because we are not clearing out the old interval when the effect updates. If we then click the slow down button, well, it doesn't work. That's because we are not clearing out the old interval when the effect updates. We can fix this by returning a cleanup function. So I guess they are trying to become React only, sort of copy React. So here you can do clear interval, which would be id, and here you can put id. The cleanup function is called immediately before the effect function reruns when interval changes, and also when the component is destroyed 2 times before running the reruns interval changes, and when the component is destroyed. If the effect function doesn't read any state when it runs, if the effect function doesn't read any state when it runs, it will, it's interesting, if the effect function doesn't read any state when it runs, so if it would not have any state like elapsed or interval, also when the component it will only run once when the component mounts. Okay, so if you have something, then it runs, otherwise it runs on. If it do not run during server-side rendering, that's interesting. If it would not run there, otherwise they would choke the server itself. I guess this is the final article of this section. In the preceding exercises, we used runes to add reactivity inside component, but we can also use runes outside component. For example, to share some global state, the counter component in these exercises are all importing the counter object from share.js, but it's a normal object, so nothing happens when you click the button and wrap the object in the state. So if you see, this is a counter and here you have a counter. So if you go to share.js, which is export const counter, and it has a state of count 0. So if we do this state and do this, so it's now wrapped, this counter is wrapped here, and here we have from shared.js. Okay, this causes an error because you can't use runes in normal JS file. Okay, only soldier. Let's fix that, rename the file to this. So we have a share.svelte, svelte.js cannot load virtual this. Okay, we have a shared svelte.js, then update the input declaration in counter. So here we say svelte. Okay, and update the input declaration in this. So here we go to counter svelte, and we can remove, we can go to counter svelte, and here counter is being imported from there. Now when you click any button, all three updates simultaneously. Interesting. You cannot export a state declaration from a module if the declaration is reassigned. You cannot export a state declaration. So this is export declaration from a module if the declaration is reassigned. So if I do this 1 2 3, yes, so you cannot export it because this is reassigned, rather than just mutate it, because the importers would have no way to know it. Whereas if I say counter dot state or something, interesting. So if you modify it or mutate it, it's can be shared there, but if you reassign it, you are not allowed to export it. You cannot. So far I guess it's good. This is like following simple pattern. I want to understand when would it break, what are the use cases it won't be able to solve, in which case we would still require framework like Angular or React, or basically we would have to ship frameworks in the browser. So I guess that is all in this video. We have explored quite a good part of it. We have explored creating first component, dynamic attribute, styling, nested components, HTML tag, state, deep state, derived state, inspecting state, effects, universal reactivity. So you can share it across. So I'll wind up here, and we'll see in the next video. We will go further. Thank you.